What are the 6 that you listed off?
My top 6 are squat.
Great.
And if you do those 6 lifts, so it's like I loved powerlifting, but if you just did the 3 lifts, your shoulders might not be maximally developed. Your lats might not max. So you might be leaving some room for glute growth on the table. And so this, in my opinion, you're going to develop all your muscles with these 6 lifts.
Let's imagine the typical woman or man in their 30s or 40s who's never really done any resistance training, maybe done some yoga, some running, maybe did a sport in high school, maybe not. And they are interested in building some muscle to shape their body the way they'd like to shape it. What is the frequency of workouts that you could give as kind of across the board? What's too many? What's too few? Per week.
Yep. So I would say 2 times a week full body would be like the minimum. Now, you could see results training just 1 day a week. Imagine if you tracked your weights, and like if you had a coach that knew what they were doing, you could get good results just lifting weights 1 day a week. It would be a brutal day, but it would be full body. You'd hit mostly, the big basic multi-joint movements. But if you stuck to that, you would see a lot of gains, and you could keep seeing gains for, theoretically an entire year or 2. If you want to maximize your gains, you need to hit a muscle probably twice a week. There's some evidence that maybe 3 times a week is best, but that's hard to recover from. But I would say for the majority of listeners who are eager to get started, you get so much of your results from the first set. Mm-hmm. The first set you do.
The first work set.
The first working set you do. Yep. And then, adding more volume, adding more frequency, it's not linear.
How many sets do you recommend per exercise after a sufficient warm-up?
In my online programs, I always recommend 3 sets. When I train people in real life, it's typically 2 sets. Mm-hmm. But I would say most of the world does 4 sets. Most people just generically do 4 sets per exercise. It's just kind of and most people do bro splits. They do body part splits. Like what the most of the world does isn't always what's best. And there's nothing wrong with doing 4 sets. It's just that people aren't focused. They just kind of go through the motions. You'll say, hey, Andrew, what's your workout? And if you go, well, I do, bench press, I do 135 for 15, and then I do 185 for 12, and then I do 205 for 8, and then 225 for 5. Well, that's what you do every week? Then why would you grow? Why would you adapt? Why would you see results from that? So a lot of people just go through the motions. When you have a plan and you're utilizing progressive overload, so we can talk about volume, frequency, all these things, but the main thing is, are you progressively overloading the muscles? Are you putting more tension on the muscles over time? And that's how people grow. So it's like you can geek out on the variables, which I love to do, but if your program is working, then you're getting stronger over time. You don't need 4 sets to do that. You need to take notes, have a logbook or an app that keeps track of your progress, and you have a goal in mind. And every coach has their own system. My system that I've had success with is kind of like focused on gaining strength over time, so that you don't require so many sets. In fact, I like my clients training 3 times per week. Full body 3 times per week.
Full body 3 times per week.
Or LULUL, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower.
With a rest day in between?
No, Monday through Friday, lower, upper, lower, upper. Take Saturday and Sunday off.
Wait, step it through because you're speaking fast. Lower, upper.
LULUL, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower. The number one tenet of strength training is progressive overload, and the listeners need to understand that, because otherwise you're just going to be spinning your wheels. Now, it's not to say you can't make gains. I do believe hitting a muscle 3 times a week is a little bit better, but it's more risky. You can spin your wheels. I don't want to say overtrain, because overtraining syndrome is something, but we all know what it means. It means stagnating because you're not properly recovered. You're spinning your wheels. And it's really hard to recover from 3 times a week. So that's why the safest bet is hit a muscle twice a week. But I think if you know what you're doing, you can do 3 times a week. So you sometimes have to adjust the variables, which are exercise selection, that's probably the most important, volume, effort, how hard you push yourself. If you're always training when you're fatigued and beat up, you're never going to get stronger. I love the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. I also love the military press, the chin up, and the hip thrust. Those are my big 6 lifts.
Real quick question, and then more about what we were just discussing. You mentioned 6 lifts, and you rattled them off very fast. Yeah, I heard squat or hip hinge in there. Could you list off the 6 things that you consider? And I realize there are many, many more exercises, but what are the 6 that you listed off?
My top 6 are squats, bench press, deadlifts, military press, chin-ups, and hip thrusts.
Great.
And if you do those 6 lifts, so it's like I loved powerlifting, but if you just did the 3 lifts, your shoulders might not be maximally developed. Your lats might not max. You might be leaving some room for glute growth on the table. And so this, in my opinion, you're going to develop all your muscles with these 6 lifts.
Squat, bench press, deadlift, military press, which is overhead press.
Overhead press.
Could be standing, could be seated, front of, et cetera.
Well,
then chin and hip thrust. And
so
there could be variations on
all the
these.
variations of those. But to maximize your recoverable volume, MRV it's this concept of maximum recoverable volume. You want to do as much volume as possible, but still recovering from it.
Okay, this is an extremely important concept that most people, I believe, have not heard of. Certainly in exercise science circles, I'm sure everybody knows, but maximal recoverable volume. How do you determine MRV? And is skill and ability in being able to target muscles a factor in MRV? Because if a client walks into your gym and let's just say she, because you train a lot of female clients, but this could be also a man talking about chest training. But let's talk about a woman comes in and she just says, listen, I don't want to be big. Right? This is kind of what you hear, but I really want my glutes to be a bit bigger and I would like to see some abs and, and she's athletic, she's done cardio, done maybe a sport, maybe played some soccer, but she wants to really focus on her glutes and her quads. What do you do to assess MRV? Are you looking for her to get stronger every single workout, or do you spend 2 or 3 weeks just like teaching her the movements?
I created this, what I called rule of thirds. And I just said, this is a way to maximize your recoverable volume. 1/3 of your exercise selection should be vertical in nature. Those are the hardest to recover from. They also build your legs. They're probably the most efficient exercise because they work so much muscle mass. These are your variations of squats, deadlifts, lunges, split squats, step-ups. Good mornings. Then you have your horizontal movements. These don't beat you up as much. They don't work you as much in the stretch position. They work you in a squeeze position. These are your variations of hip thrusts, glute bridges, back extensions, reverse hypers, 45-degree hypers, and to an extent, cable kickbacks. They don't beat you up as much. And then in the remaining third, it can be lateral rotary. These don't beat you up at all. They're your hip abduction movements, your from a cable column, putting the ankle strap on, or using ankle weights, or putting a band on, or but these are your basically what we did yesterday. That glute medius exercise at the end. They're lateral. They build the glute medius and minimus, and also the upper subdivision, the glute max. But they don't beat you up that much. They're not so hard to recover from. So that's where I said you can do. With that movement pattern checklist we said earlier, where you pick 1 squat lunge, 1 hinge pull, 1 thrust bridge, and 1 abduction movement, you could do 3 sets of each of those. That's 12 sets. You do that 3 times a week. That's 36 sets per week. How I became popular, I invented the hip thrust. I remember just going, these movements are awesome. Why don't we load them up? Why don't we make them harder? Why are we doing them as glute activation in the warm-up? Why don't we do them as a resistance exercise? I'm like, these guys are brilliant. They're using bands and bodyweight stuff, but why are we doing wimpy movements? Why don't we push the envelope on these? Because I don't like doing high reps. You don't either. We hate high reps. I want to do low reps. I don't want to do 20 reps of something. How can I load up that bridge pattern? And that's how I came up with hip thrusts. And then I'm like, how can I load up some of these abduction movements? And I came up with more movements to load up abduction. So then I said the rule of thirds. 1/3 of your movements should be lateral rotary. 1/3 horizontal, a third vertical. You can recover from it, but you're also, people will say that's 36 sets for the glute max. No, 12 of those sets are more for the glute medius and minimus, which are different muscles. They're different muscles than the glute max. So it's really 24 sets for the glute max. There's some overlap there. But the point is, I've learned that people can recover from this system.